part 1's online, Periscope's online. We're waiting on Twitch and um, YouTube. So, okay. Once again, good evening. Welcome to the part 2 of the NCAA regional breakdown. We're going to be going over all 64 regional teams. So that's in the college baseball regionals this year. So we're going to begin. We're going to resume with the Fayetteville regional. We'll begin with that. So we're just waiting on everybody to get online. So we're waiting for Twitch to get online. So just please sit tight. We're going to be on in a few minutes with the regional breakdown again. So we'll do it again. We did the first part 1 of it. So this is part 2. So we're going to begin doing that in just a second. We're waiting on Twitch. So there it is, Twitch. Everybody's on. So let's go ahead and begin with breakdowns again. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's go ahead and pull this out. Okay, 1 second. There it is. Okay, let's begin with the where we left off. Was the Fayetteville Regional. We went over Central Connecticut. Now we'll go over TCU and Cal. We'll go over those teams. And also we'll go over the Oxford Regional. So let's begin doing this again. Let's go ahead and look at first team we'll look at is number 3 TCU from the Big 12 and number 2 Cal from the Pac 12. So let's go ahead and look at that. So let's go up to TCU. We're going to switch over. Let's go to TCU. Let's go ahead and look at that. All right, TCU. TCU finished 11-13 in the Big 12 conference, 32-26 overall. So they finished with a 32-win season. Their RPI was 59th. Their strength of schedule was 51st. Their top 25 wasn't not available. Let's go ahead and go through the schedule. With TCU's schedule, they had TCU had Cal State Fullerton on the schedule. They also had Virginia. They also had Vanderbilt on the schedule as well. That was in the those 3 games was in the MLB 4 collegiate baseball tournament that was in Scottsdale, Arizona. First 2 games, they lost to Cal State Fullerton. Also, they played Virginia, and they beat Virginia, and they also beat Vanderbilt. So they beat Vanderbilt in that tournament. That was one that started off the season for TCU. Okay, they have Abilene Christian. They defeated them 12-4, but they couldn't play the first game because it was weather, but they had to play it on the second night. They played Grand Canyon University. They won that series 2-1. They played Sam Houston State, but it was canceled due to fog. Also, they played Houston, Texas A&M, and it was another tournament that was in the Shriners Hospital tournament in Houston. That was in Houston. They played Rice and lost 12-2. They played Houston and won 10-6. So I'm gonna say this: look, that was they had very complex schedule on this for 2019. Also, they played Stephen F. Austin. They kind of won that game 19-3 single-handedly. They also played Long Beach State. That was in 3 games. They won 2-1. Also, they played San Diego and lost to San Diego. They also played Eastern Michigan, MAC team. So that was a MAC team. They swept them 3-0. So let's go ahead and see if we get the chat room up. I'll pull this up on my screen. So see if we got anybody in the chat rooms. I see one. How you doing, Pat Riley on Facebook Live? How you doing? Okay, let's go ahead and go over this. They played UT Arlington in the from the Sun Belt, and they did win that series. Also, they played Texas. They played Texas. This is in the Fayetteville Regional. We're going over the Fayetteville Regional, and we'll go over um, the other regionals. Texas, they beat them 2-1. Also, they played Rio Grande Valley. They won that series. Um, Also, they played Oklahoma State. Lost that series 2-1. They also played UT Arlington again and won that game single-handedly 3-2. Also, they played Oklahoma and lost 2 games, won 2-1. So won 2-1. Also, they played Dallas Baptist. Now, Dallas Baptist. Here's the thing about Dallas Baptist. You need to know. Look, this is a very good Dallas Baptist team right here. I mean, they get in the regionals year after year after year after year. So, and I'm gonna tell you, they played them in a tough conference schedule. Like um, so I look at it this way. Look, um, don't don't um don't underestimate these teams. Like I kept saying, like I keep saying in these videos, don't underestimate these teams. Also, they played Seton Hall from the Big East. They won 2-1. They played K State, and they also played UT Arlington again. They lost that game. Um, they lost that series 2-1. 2-1. So that was 2-1 in that series. So they also played Dallas Baptist another again. So they played them 2 times on this. We're looking at them right now. Dallas Baptist. Also, they played West Virginia. They played Abilene Christian. Also, they played Lamar. Lamar's a Southland team. They lost that game. Also, they played Texas Tech, TCU, in the Big 12 tournament. They lost the first game to Oklahoma State. They won the second game on Friday, Thursday, May 23rd. Correction. Also, they played Baylor. That was a suspended game, but they had to play it second night. That was on a Saturday. They played Oklahoma State. They won 13-6, and then lost to Oklahoma State again. So let's go ahead and recap the TCU record. Their RPI was 59. Their non-conference RPI was 111. Their strength of schedule was 51st, and their non-conference strength of schedule was 179th. Also, at home they finished 16-11. On the road, 9-10, and also they finished 7-5 in the neutrals. They finished with a pretty good 21-13 record there. So this is what we're showing you right here, 21-13. Let's go ahead and look at the versus RPI teams. Let's go ahead and look at that. 1 through 25. TCU finished 6-10. Also 26 through 50. TCU finished 6-4. 51 through 100. They finished 7-6. Also 101 through 200. They finished 8-4. And also 201 plus, which is the goes down to the 300 plus mark. So they finished 5-2. So that's going to be a pretty good series right there with California. So they're going to be playing Cal. So they're the number 2 seed. We'll go ahead and recap. We'll go ahead and do them now. Let's go ahead and look at Cal. I'm waiting on everything to come up. They will play Cal. So let's go ahead and look at they're the number 2 seed in the tournament. Okay, let's go ahead and look at Cal. Okay, Cal. Let's go ahead and look at them. They finished 32-18 on the season, 17-11 in Pac-12 play. So they finished 17-11 in Pac-12 play, and they finished 30th in the RPI. So they got in. So they got in. Um, they finished 52nd in the strength of schedule. So the thing is, if you keep your RPI between the 30s, all the way to the I could say mid 20s and stuff like that, mid 20s, 30s and stuff like that, you'll get into the tournament. That's it. Okay, let's begin with the breakdown of schedule. Okay, they played Northwestern on their schedule. They also played BYU on their schedule, so that was pretty good right there. Also, they played Cal Poly. That's out of I think the Big West Conference. They played St. Mary's. That's out of the I think the Big West Conference as well. Also, they played LSU. They came over here. They won one game and lost 2 games to LSU. That was back in May of March of this year. So March 8th and March 9th. So March 8th and March 9th. They played Cal. So that was, like I said, the first half of the baseball season. They played San Jose State. They started conference play with USC. They won 1 game and lost 2 games in that series. They played the San Francisco Dons. That's a team out of I think the Big West or something like that, way out in California. They played Oregon State. They won 1 game and lost all 2 games on March 23rd and March 24th. They played Sacramento State. They did lose that game. They also played Long Beach State. So they played some teams on this schedule for Cal. That's going to be in the Fayetteville Regional. How you doing? What's up? We're going over regionals part 2. So how you doing? Kerry Thompson. We're breaking down the regional brackets that just came out today for the NCAA regionals. So if you got a comment, just give me I don't mind. Come up in here. You can talk to me about it. So yeah. 2 more teams with Cubs. Good luck. Yeah. I know know the feeling. So let's go ahead and look at the continue looking at the Cal schedule. Cal played Washington. They defeated them 3-0. They played New Mexico, but they couldn't get the game in due to schedule and problems and stuff like that. They played Arizona. They won that game 2-1. They played UCLA. They also lost 2-1 to UCLA. They played Sacramento State and won that game. Also, they played Oregon. but they lost the last game of that series against Oregon. Now they play BYU. BYU is a Mountain West team, so they scheduled some pretty good teams to bear. Um, they scheduled a Big East team. They scheduled, I think, Big West and stuff like that, and so on. So they played Utah and they won 3 games to 0. They played the San Francisco Dons once again. They won that game. They played Stanford and they defeated Stanford 1 game to 2. So they didn't win the series, but they won 1 game out of that series. They played Arizona State. They lost that. They lost the first game that was on March 17th, and they played on March the 19th and won 3-2. And game game 2 was canceled due to weather. So that was inclement weather in the California area. So also they played Washington. They won 2 games, but didn't get to play the third game against Washington. So they'll play TCU in this in the Fayetteville Regional. Okay, let's go ahead and break down Cal's resume by numbers. Okay, let's begin looking at the numbers. Okay, at home, Cal finished 16-7. On the road, they were pretty good, 15-8. So they were a good team. So wherever they go, I don't care if it's cross country or around town or whatever, they're pretty good on the road. Cal, they finished 1-3 in their neutral, so this is going to be a neutral site for Cal. Also, they finished 15-7 in non-conference play. 15-7 in non-conference play right there. So that's a pretty good team right there on those non-conferences. So we're going to go ahead and look at the rankings. RPI 30th. So they finished 30th in that RPI. Non-conference 43rd. Strength of schedule 52nd for Cal, and non-conference 91st. They didn't have a pretty good non-conference strength of schedule right there, so that they went a little. There was a little lackadaisical on those non-conferences, RPI and strength of schedule. Now let's go examine the RPI teams they played. This is it goes 1 through 201. Let's go ahead and look at them. Let's look at them. 1 through 25. They played the 1 through 25s. That's the top ranks. They finished 4-8. 26 through 55-2. 51 through 100, 7-5. 101 through 200, 10-2, and they're pretty good at against the 201s. That's all the way down to the 300s. So it goes. That's how they go 201 to 30 something. I think it is 6-1. So these two records right here, 10-2. I'm gonna highlight them. 10-2. And 6-1, so they were pretty good. Now, this one right here, I'm gonna say this was 26 through 50, so they finished pretty well on those in all 4 of those categories. But the only one that was very not good was so this is what they look at right here. This is what they look at. Your performance versus the RPI teams. That's what they look at. That's what these committees look at, and that's how they determine if they're going to be a regional participant or regional host. That's the key right there. Let's go ahead. And um, we just went over Fayetteville. Now we'll go over to the Ole Miss Regional. We'll start looking over Ole Miss. So let's begin the Ole Miss Regional breakdown. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's start with Jacksonville State. We'll start with Jacksonville State. We'll start with Clemson, and then we'll end with Illinois. So we'll work our way down tonight. Okay, let's begin with Jacksonville State. They're in the Ohio Valley. Let's go ahead and look at their performance um, in college baseball this year. Okay, let's look at Jacksonville State. They are going to be playing Ole Miss in the Ole Miss Regionals, so that's going to be this coming weekend, Friday. So we'll start with Jacksonville State, and we'll work our way down. Okay, Jacksonville State finished with a 37-21 record, 22-8. That was a pretty good record in the Ohio Valley Conference. They finished 89th in RPI, so their RPI was in the 80s. So also they finished 159th in the strength of schedule. And we'll go through their schedule. Let's see what they scheduled, because look, they're let's go ahead and look at it. Starting on the first night in February, they played North Alabama. That's I know that's a new team. That's they was in, I think it was in D2 or something like that. They did won those games, 2 games, and lost the second game. So they played 3 games. They won 2 games to 1 on that series right there. That was 2 games to 1. They lost the last series 2-1. They also played Alabama, which is an SEC team. They lost that game. Also, they played Jacksonville. They lost. They got swept in that series too. They also played UAB. They won 5-3. They played Troy. They won 9-7. So that's teams right there. You're looking at these baseball teams, and they're very good teams that you can look at. So let's go ahead. All right. They played Florida International. That's FIU. They did won the lost that series 2-1. They played Troy. They also played Stanford on the schedule. They played Georgia. So they played 2 SEC teams on that schedule. 2 SEC teams on the schedule. So they also played Eastern Illinois. That's in conference play. I think that's conference play. Okay, they played Troy again. They won 9-5. They played Purdue. So they played some very mighty tough competition right there. Also, they played Murray State. They started with Murray State. They played Alabama State. They played Tennessee Tech, and they won 3-0. Also, they played Southeast Missouri State. They won 2-1. They played Auburn. So they got three SEC schools now. We're looking at it. We're going over this schedule right here. This is something right here we're looking at. 3 SEC schools on the schedule. That was something right there. So they won 11-6 against. That was pretty amazing right there. So that's against an SEC school. They played Belmont, and they won 9-0, lost 7-1, and won 9-4. Now they played Eastern Kentucky. Also, they played Auburn again for a second time, and then Alabama for a second time. So they got their competition in with SEC schools and also Big Ten schools. They played SIU Evansville. They played Austin Prey. Um, they did won 3 games to 0. That was in May. Also, they played in the OBAC tournament against Belmont. Won the first game, won the second game, won the third game. So they did go through their conference. They won their conference championship. So that is rightfully so. They should be in this regional, rightfully so, because they earned their way through there. Oxford regional, so they'll be in the Oxford regional game too. Okay, let's go ahead and look at their home record. They finished 20 and 11. They also finished 14 and 10. So don't make no mistake about it. They will be as tough on the road as as predicted. So they might give Ole Miss um, a pretty good game because they beat Auburn. They beat Auburn on that on that schedule. And also, let's look at it again. Let's recap it. They let's go back. They beat they lost to Alabama in the first game against Alabama, but um, and they also played Auburn on let's see. They lost 2 times, but they also lost to Auburn as well. But I'm gonna tell you, they played some very tough competition in college baseball for these teams. Okay, um, let's go ahead and go over. Let's go ahead and they finished 3-0 in neutral sites, so they are very good on neutral sites. That's one thing about it. They are good. They have a 3-0 record against those neutral sites. Also, they finished 15 and 13 in non-conference play. So non-conference play, 15 and 13. Also, their non-conference RPI was 171. So they was just it was just very high. Also, their strength of schedule was kind of real weak. I think it was. It was 159 on strength of schedule and 162 on non-conference. Now let's go ahead and break down the versus RPI teams. They didn't do too well. The first 3 categories, 1 through 25, 26 through 50, 51 through 100. But 101 through 200, they went 14 and 6. 14 and 6. Also, the 201 plus, they finished 17 and 6. 17 and 6. So they had a pretty good performance against those lower tier teams. That's in the 100 through 300 plus. So that's the breakdown on Jacksonville State. We'll go ahead and break down Clemson. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go break down the Clemson Tigers. Pull that up. Clemson Tigers. Okay, Clemson finished 34 and 24. They finished with an even 15 and 15 record. Their RPI was 38th, and their strength of schedule was 32. So let's go ahead and examine their schedule and also records. Okay, they played South Alabama. That was a Sun Belt team, so they kind of went down a little bit with that schedule, playing South Alabama. So they also played Charlotte. That was another runner win right there. That was another runner win right there for Charlotte. Also, they played Tennessee Tech. They couldn't get them in, but they played them in the makeup games. BMI. Um, they won 3 games to 0 against BMI. So they played some pretty weak competition. That's one thing about it. Um, some of them is weak competition because, but they're look. Here's the thing about that. They're these weak competitions. They can hit the ball and score you to death with. They also played SEC South Carolina. They played South Carolina on their schedules. That was the next best tough schedule right there. South Carolina. Um, when they started conference play, they played North Carolina. Um, they it was ninth through the 10th. They won all 3 games in that series. Also, they played Coastal Carolina, another Sun Belt team. They won that series. Also, they played Notre Dame. They won that, lost that series 2 games to 1. Also, they played College of Charleston. So that was they went down a little bit on that schedule. That's why their schedule is very was in a high rankings in the hundreds right there on their rankings right there on strength of schedule. Also, they played Boston College. They played Charlotte. They played Virginia Tech. But they also played Georgia. So they had SEC teams on that schedule as well. So they played College Charleston Southern. So also they played Gardner Webb. That's I think that's in the trying to say the Southern SoCon Conference. Also they played Presbyterian. They played Citadel. They played um, North Carolina State, and they played Coastal Carolina. So that's why I say, look, they're going to schedule these rinky-dinky schools. That's they might play some of these teams from the Northeast, some of them from the East, and some of them from the West. So they also played Louisville in the tournament. They did lose. There was 1-1 right there, and there was so they will play Illinois. That's game 1. So they're going to be in the first game of the day, game 1. Let's go ahead and look at their numbers. They finished 21-12 at home. Clemson also they finished 10-11 on the road, so not nearly as good on the road as at home. So they finished 3-1. They also finished 19-9 in non-conference play. So they had 9 losses in those and also had 19 wins. So 19 wins. Their SOS. They had a pretty good schedule in the SOS. It was 32nd, but they went down to 138 because they had those lower tier teams on the schedule. But the thing is, they had the 32nd. The reason why they had that 32nd because of the SEC schedule. They had SEC teams that they had on this on the schedule right here. Also, let's go ahead and go over the RPI versus RPI 1 through 25. It went 8-7. Clemson went 0-6 and 26 through 50. So they had 26. They probably had teams that was in that 26 through 50 range in the RPI. They finished 0-6 against them. Also, the 51 through 100, they finished 12-5. The 101 through 200, they finished 7-6. And the 201 plus, they finished 7-0. So, look, they had a pretty good performance against the 51 through 100 ones, and also the 201s. So, which is the the extreme lower tier teams, the teams um, that has 200 all the way to 300 and so on. So that's the thing we're looking at. So this is Clemson. We just went over Clemson. Clemson will take on. Scroll it down. They will take on Illinois, so we'll go over Illinois next. Next will be Illinois, so we'll go ahead and go over Illinois. We'll go to the Big Ten Conference. Okay, let's get Illinois up on the screen, and we'll look at Illinois' resume. We'll see how they did. Okay, they finished 15-9 in the Big Ten Conference. They had a 28 RPI and 55th on their strength of schedule, and also they were in the top 20 as well. So they was 20th in the top 25. So they finished that. So it's top 20, top 25. So okay, let's go ahead and look at their schedule. Um, this is what's in 2019. They played Georgetown, which was a Big East team. They also played Wake Forest, ACC teams. So they played ACC opponents. Also, they played Conference USA in Florida Atlantic. And also, they played these Northeast teams like Northeastern. They played them twice. They also played the American Conference School and UConn. They played Grand Canyon. I think that's in. I'm pretty sure it's in the WAC conference. That's what I'm looking at. Also, they played Southern Illinois. That's Oback School. They played St. Louis. They also played Illinois State. That's I think that's their rival. I don't know. That's in the same state, Illinois. Also, they play Iowa. That was in conference play. So Iowa, they got swept in that game. They played Coastal Carolina. That is a Sunbelt school. So they had Sunbelt schools on there. They also had Maryland. That was sandwiched in between the Maryland game. So they also had Illinois State. They had Minnesota. They defeated Minnesota 2-1, but lost the third game. That was on a Monday night because they had the weather conditions. So that's the situation on that. They also played Bradley. They played Penn State. They swept that series. They also played Nebraska. They did take that series. They had Bradley, I think, one, and I think that's two. That's two times. April 16th and April 23rd, so that was maybe like a week later. Also, they played Indiana. They played them real tight in these games. This was 4-0, 3-1, and they lost 9-2 in the third game. Also, they played Purdue. They swept them 5-2, 5-4, 6-4. So this was 1 and 2 run games right here. This is also these were very close games right here for Illinois and Purdue. Now Michigan State, they played them in East Lansing, Michigan. They won 2-1. They lost the second game 5-2. They played Maryland. That was in the Big Ten tournament, so they had their Big Ten tournament in Omaha, the site of the College World Series. So they lost 2 games to Maryland and also Michigan. So they will play Clemson. That will be in game 1. That's going to be the first game of the day in the Oxford Regional. So that's in the Oxford Regional. Let's go ahead. That's going to be a pretty good matchup between the ACC and the Big Ten conference. So let's go ahead and give you the by the numbers stats. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. They finished 18-4 at home, so they had a good record at home. Illinois, they had a good record at home. Also, they finished 15-11 in um, road games. So I'm gonna tell you, wherever they go, if they play Clemson or Ole Miss or whoever in that region, if they win, they're most likely going to. It's going to be a pretty good matchup between those schools. So um, they also finished 21-10 in non-conference. So they had some non-conference wins. So they had a good record in non-conference. Um, let's show you their rankings. Their non-conference strength of schedule was third. So they had a pretty brutal schedule. That's one thing about it. I don't want to hear anybody come on here saying that Illinois didn't do this, didn't do that, all that. No. I'm showing you these numbers right here. I'm showing you what they did. Also, their non-conference strength of schedule was 15th. So that was in the top 20 in non-conference strength of schedule. But their SOS was which is strength of schedule was 55th. So they was not that good in those strength of schedule. But non-conference, they had a pretty good non-conference strength of schedule. Let's go ahead and look at the versus RPI teams. They go 1 through 201 plus. Let's begin. They had an even record in 1 through 25. They finished 10-5 through in the 26 through 50 teams. Also, they finished 51 through 100 at. They finished 6-5, so 6-5 with the 51 through 100s. Also, the 101 through 200, they finished 13-7. Also, they finished 6-1, so they had a pretty good record against the 201s plus in games like that. So Illinois, look, that's going to be a very good series between Clemson and Illinois to bear. Whoever wins this, I think they're going to most likely maybe host the Super Regional. Whoever comes out of the next regional pairing, which is the Fayetteville, they will most likely either host or either go to that game. We may see Arkansas and Clemson, or we may see Ole Miss in Arkansas again. We may see it again. That might be the possibility right there, the realm of possibility. That's going to happen. So we are done with the Fayetteville and the Oxford Regional. We will start on the Starkville and Stanford Regional. We'll start talking about those regionals, and we'll also go through Louisville and also Greenville, and then Lubbock, Oklahoma City, and then also Los Angeles. So let's go ahead and begin with, let's talk about Southern, the Southern Jaguars. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and start with Southern. We'll break down Southern. Let's go to the SWAC conference. Okay, let's go to the SWAC conference. Okay, SWAC conference, the Southern Jaguars, we'll go over them. Okay, the Southern Jaguars finished 32-22. They finished 17-6 in their conference. 17-6. So that's a pretty good record to bear. with the Southern Jaguars. So Southern, I was hoping that LSU would play Southern, but I was wrong about that one. That was just they just paired up um, Stony Brook. So they sent Stony Brook here and Southern to Starkville, Mississippi. So let's go ahead and look at their RPI. They was in the 200, so that was the 201 plus. They also strength for schedule was 291st, so that was just a that might be a gaudy record, but hey, Southern is a scrappy ball club. They're a very scrappy ball club. That's one thing to bear. They are scrappy. Okay, this was in the Andre Dawson Classic. They played Grambling, Florida A&M, and Alcorn State. Um, they won all three games, so that's one thing about Southern. Look, I saw Southern so many times. When Roger Cador was coaching, they can hit the ball. That's one thing about it. Southern can hit the ball. They'll hit the ball and they have the here's a note. They have a player from Chalmette called his name is Malik Blaze. He plays for him. I think he plays shortstop. So he plays shortstop. So I'm pretty sure he's going to get his first taste of regional play right here when they go up to Starkville, Mississippi. Also, they played Air Force. That was in Alex Box Stadium. That was crosstown at LSU's campus. They played Northwestern State. They lost one game to Northwestern State. That was on Sunday, and they also lost one in a doubleheader, 7-5. So they lost the first game and won the second game. That was a doubleheader game. LSU. That was the first. They won lost 17-4 against LSU. But they did win the second game 7-2. So that's why I say, look, they gave LSU in that game, the last game that was at Lee Hines Field. They gave LSU all that they can handle. So don't think for 1 second. Like I said, I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying this again. I'm going to keep driving it home until my point gets across. They also played Eastern Illinois, and they played Southern Miss. They lost 8-3 to Southern Miss. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff and won 3 games to 0. They played ULM up in Monroe. They lost 10-6 in Monroe. They also played Texas Southern. They won 2 games to 1. That's the start of conference play right there. No, with Arkansas Pine Bluff, start of conference play in the second game. Now they played Lamar. Lamar is a Southland team. They're always going into postseason play as well. They played Grambling. Grambling. We'll go ahead and scroll it down. Grambling. They won that game, so they won it convincingly, 18-8, and they had a wild game against them in game 2, and game 3 they won 13-8. Now they played UNO at Privateer Park and on the lakefront. They did lose that game 9-6. They played Northwestern State again. That was a makeup game. Lost 6-3. They played Prairie View A&M. That was up in Texas. They won 2 games to 1. They played Nichols. Nichols. It was a very close game in that game, 4-2. They played Memphis. That was an American Conference team. They won 1 game, but they lost the next 2 games on April 6th. Now, this game right here, I was just talking about LSU. LSU could not render runs against Southern. They had a pretty good pitcher on there. Sure, he might have gave up some hits and runs and stuff like that, but he shut them down. He shut their bats down completely. Sure, they scored 2 runs, but they shut their bats down completely. Now they played UNO. That was at their place. They won 5-4. They also played Arkansas Pine Bluff. Um, they won 10-4, and also they just demolished that team 21-2. They demolished Arkansas Pine Bluff in game 2. So that's why I say this team, Southern, is not going to be very. They're not going to be lay an egg. They will not lay an egg. Also, Texas Southern. They won that game 2-1. Also, they played ULM in Baton Rouge at their place. They won 5-4. They played Grambling at Grambling. That was up in North Louisiana. They won the first game, but they did drop the last 2 games against Grambling. Also, Prairie View A&M was showing you that's May 4th through 5th. So that's May 4th through 5th. They had a doubleheader in that game. They played UNO. That was the last series of UNO. They lost that game 5-4. That was back in Privateer Park in New Orleans. Now they played down here in the that was last week. They played in the they were supposed to play in the I think it was the HBCU World Series Classic that's in Chicago. I think they didn't they couldn't play because I think they canceled that game. So I don't know why they did, but that's just what they did. The HBU concept. So they played North Carolina A&T. That was in the that was supposed to be in that classic we was talking about, but they didn't get to play that classic. So I mean, I'll be honest with you, Southern. Look, all these black college baseball teams and stuff like that. Look, if they want to play in their little baseball classic, then so be it. This is in game 1 against Mississippi State. Let's go ahead and give you a glimpse of Southern. Southern finished 16-6 at home, 9-14 on the road. So they was struggling on the road, 9-14. They finished 7-2 in neutrals. That was they had a game down here in New Orleans. They played non-conference. They finished 15-16. So they was a little struggled in that in the non-conference. So let's go ahead and give you the rankings breakdown. This is non-conference. They finished 174th, so that was 174th. Also in the rankings in non-conference RPI, they finished 222, so that's in the 201 category right there, and then 206. Now, let's go ahead and look at the RPIs versus RPI teams. 1 through 25, 1-1. 26 through 50, they finished 0-1. They had a 0-0 record. They did not play against the 51 and 100 teams, but they did play the 101 through 200. They finished 6-12. But here's the thing: the 201s, and this is a pretty good resume right here for Southern. Southern finished 25-8. 25-8. 25-8. Yeah, that's just a. That's why I say, look, sure they're going to be playing against Mississippi State, so they was in the 1 through 25, so they're 1-1 in that series right there against Mississippi State. I don't know if they're going to win against Mississippi State, but I'm gonna tell you they're going to give them a good game. I mean, because Southern doesn't quit. That's one thing about it. So let's go over another team. We'll begin with the Central Michigan. Let's go ahead over Central Michigan, and we'll go over Miami. The Mid American Conference. Let's go over Central Michigan team. Let's go over them. Central Michigan. Let's go ahead and look at Central Michigan. We'll examine their schedule. Central Michigan finished 46-12. They finished 22-5 in the Mid American Conference. That's the MAC. They finished 73rd in their power RPI, and their strength of schedule. They finished 279th. 279th on those strength of schedule tutorials. Okay, let's look at the first couple of games. The schedule. We'll go ahead and look at that. Let's go ahead and they played Troy. That was a Sun Belt team, so they had to come down. They're from the Midwest. They also played Prairie View A&M and Lamar, and also they played a Northeast team out of probably out of, I think that's Hofstra. I think it's out of New York or something like that. Hofstra. Also, they played Butler. Butler is I think it's a Big East team that was in the Florida Invitational. They also played Pittsburgh in that game, and they also played. This is March 2nd through March 8th. So they did play in it, and they also played Mount St. Mary's. They also played Villanova. That was in so that was all the way through the 10th. So March 2nd through 10th. So they played those. That's in so because the weather up in the Midwest, I'm gonna tell you, during the springtime, it's most likely crappy. So that's why I say these Midwest. Let's see, the Northeast teams. So they come down south and play these in Southern teams and stuff like that. And also same thing. Let's go ahead and look at. They played Illinois State on their schedule. They had rain out on that one. Also, they played Michigan State. They played Ohio. That's in the they played in the conference in their conference. They also played Grand Valley. They played Grand Valley. That's, I don't know what that is. I think that's maybe a D1 independent or something like that, or maybe a D2 school. So that was a D2 school or something like that. They also played Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a ACC school. Excuse me. They went back to conference play against Ball State after the Michigan State win. They also played, I think this is a Rising League team in Oakland, so they played Oakland. They also played Kent State. They played Cornerstone. I don't know what this is. I don't. This might be maybe a major NAIA school or whatever. Cornerstone. Also, they played Toledo. They won 2 games against Toledo. They played Davenport. I don't know if it's a D2 school or whatever. I don't know if it is. I mean, we just okay. They played Western Michigan. They also played Bowling Green, but they played them in makeup games. They played Oakland again. They played Concordia University, Concordia, Michigan. I think it's a D3 school in Michigan or something like that. I don't. Also, they played Eastern Michigan, Michigan State again. They also played Miami, Ohio, and they played Ohio in the tournament, and Ball State in the tournament, and also they'll take on Miami. So Miami, they're going Miami. I don't know if Miami might beat this team. They might beat them. I don't know. They might beat um, Central Michigan. So that might be a complete win for Miami. So, but you can't underestimate these teams. So please, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and go over their record. 13-1 at home for Central Michigan. 19-8 on the road. So they're very good on the road as well. 19-8. 11-2 in neutral sites. They finished 24-7 in non-conference play. RPI wise, they finished 73rd, 116th in the non-conference. Strength of schedule 279, and they finished a little worse in the non-conference strength of schedule. So let's go ahead and um, let's go ahead and look at that. Okay, versus RPI teams, they didn't play against the 1 through 25s. They were low. They didn't win against the um, 26 through 50. They didn't play against the 51 through 100. But the main ones they played against was the 101 through 200, and also the 201s. So they played against the 201 plus RPI teams. That's in that category. They finished 14-5 in the 101 through 200 teams they played. Also, they played the 201s. They finished 28-4. So they had a good record between those two numbers, right? Those two lower tier teams. So that's the RPI on Central Michigan. Let's go ahead and go over Miami. Let's go look at Miami some. The Miami Hurricanes. Let's go ahead and look at them. They was here's the thing about Miami. Miami was picked to come here in Baton Rouge, but they sent them all the way up to Starkville. They sent them to Starkville, Mississippi, to play in these in that regional in Starkville, Mississippi. So let's go ahead and look at the Miami Hurricanes. I'm going to go over them in a second. Give me 1 second to switch this out. Okay, we'll have it on the screen in just a few minutes. Okay, Miami finished 39-18. Also, they finished 18-12 in the ACC. Their RPI was 17th, so they had a pretty good RPI number. There is in the close to the top 20. Also, strength of schedule was 25, so they was in the top 25 when it comes to strength of schedule. Now they was 17th in the top 25 all season long, so they were 17th for Miami. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the Miami schedule. They had Rutgers on that schedule. They also had Florida Atlantic. They also had Florida. They also also had Florida International. They also had UMBC. They also had Appalachia State. That's a Sunbelt team. They also had they started with Georgia Tech, so they started conference playoff against Georgia Tech. They had Jackson State, which is a SWAC team. They also had North Carolina, and they played them at North Carolina. They lost two games at North Carolina. Also, they played Columbia. I mean, this is they lost to Columbia, and that's a predominantly ACC team right there in Miami. I mean, that's something right there. When you lose to an Ivy League school like Columbia, that's something right there. They played North Carolina State. They got swept in that series against North Carolina State. They also played Florida Atlantic, and they won that series. They also played Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is, I think, it's an ACC team. They played against them, and they won 2 games against them to 1. They also played Florida Atlantic again, and they won 6-4. They also played Florida State. Florida State, they defeated them 11-0 in the first game. They shut them out 4-0 in game 2. In game 3, they lost by 1. That's something right there. They lost by 1 run against Florida State, and that's Florida State. They also played Florida Gulf Coast, but they single-handedly beat these two teams. They won 13-9 and 10-1. Now they played against Virginia. They swept Virginia. They had some rain issues in that game against Virginia. That was on April the 12th. Also, they played Louisville. They lost 1 game, 2 games, 2 games to 1, 2 games to 1. So 2 games to 1. But they had to play another game due to suspended rain. Also, they played Florida International. They had this team multiple times on this schedule. Also, they played Virginia Tech. They swept them. They played a MEAC school in Bethune-Cookman. They played Bethune-Cookman. They swept that series. They played UCF. UCF, they lost by 1 against UCF. They should have never lost that game against UCF. They also played Wake Forest. They won that game 2 games to 1. The series 2 games to 1. Now they played Duke. Duke, they did take that series 2 games to 1. That was a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday game. Now in the ACC tournament, they should they got in by their record. They got in by their rankings, because they won against Virginia in game 1 of the it was in game 8. That was in Durham, North Carolina, and in game 11 they lost to North Carolina. So I'm gonna say this: look, whoever they play, they're going to be they most likely going to be gunning for those a super regional. So let's go ahead and break down their records. At home, they're 25-9. So 25-9 record. On the road, Miami is 13-8. So they had a pretty good performance on the road as well. In the neutrals, they finished 1-1, even 1-1. But their non-conference record was 21-6, 21-6 against non-conference opponents. So let's go ahead and break down rankings wise. They finished 17th in the RPI. They finished 32nd in non-conference RPI. So non-conference, they had a 32nd ranking. They finished 25th in the strength of schedule, but their non-conference was a little, I could say, pissy. Now let's go ahead and look at the um, versus RPIs. They didn't have a good performance against the 1 through 25 teams. They finished 4-9, but when we go down the line, 26 through 50, Miami went 11-6. Um, also, the 51 through 100, they went 5-1. The 101 through 200, that's the teams that's in the lower tier to last lower tier. They finished 11-2, so they was pretty good against those teams. Now the 201s, that's all the way down to the bottom. Maybe close to 300, over 300. I could say 300, and I think it's 300 something. I'm trying to, not too sure. They finished 8-0. The Miami Hurricanes finished 8-0. So make no mistake about it. Look, that 39. Don't let this 4-9 record. Don't let this 4-9 record fool you. Don't let this fool you now, because they can play against these teams. So they finished at that. They almost had 40 wins. They almost had 40 wins for the Miami Hurricanes. So, look, whoever they played, I think they're gonna get in some. They're gonna have if they let's go ahead and take this back up again. Okay, we're back in. Okay, whoever they play, I'm looking at it right now. I'm pretty sure that they're going to wipe the floor with Central Michigan. That's going to be Central Michigan. It's just a MAC team, but they can scrap as well. Also, Southern, if they get Southern, they might have that perennial matchup against Mississippi State. That's in the regional. Hopefully that will happen, but we're this is not set in stone right here. So let's go ahead and go over the Stanford Regional. We'll begin with Stanford Regional. We'll begin with Sacramento State, Fresno State, and UC Santa Barbara. Let's go ahead and begin with. We're now on the Stanford Regional. We'll go over Sacramento State, which is in the WAC conference. We'll talk about them. I have to go way down into the WAC conference. Let's go see if they got their WAC conference. Okay, WAC conference. It's the WAC. Sacramento State is in the WAC conference. Okay, let's go ahead and look at Sacramento State. Sacramento State finished. They're going to be playing Stanford. So that's going to be I think that's going to be game 2 or game. We'll look at it in a few minutes. Okay. They finished 39-23. So they had a 39 win season right there. Also, they finished 18-9 in the Western Athletic Conference, which is the WAC conference. Louisiana Tech used to be in that conference, but they moved up to the Conference USA. So they moved down to the Conference USA. Okay, let's begin looking at their schedule. They played North Dakota State. That was some FCS schools right there. They also played Pacific on their schedule. They played UC Davis. That's out in California. They also played UCLA on their schedule as well. And then they played Mount St. Mary's. That was in March. Also, they played Thompson. That was I think that's the CAA. So they played the CAA school in Thompson. They played Ryder, which is I think that's the Metro Atlantic. Also, they played San Jose State. They played UT Rio Grande Valley. They played Cal. They played Cal Baptist. They played that's I don't know. This probably maybe um, a D3 school or maybe an NAI school or whatever. They couldn't play that game. So also they played Nevada. That was in the and they played CSU Bakersfield. They played Santa Clara. They played Seattle. They played Chicago State, and they played Illinois State. Also, they played Cal once again. They played New Mexico State. That was in April. They played San Francisco, the San Francisco Dons. I think that's what their name is. They also played Northern Colorado. I think that's the Big Sky School. They also played Utah Valley. They played Nevada again. They played St. Mary's. And they played Grand Canyon University. That's I don't know if that's out in the in Denver somewhere. Okay, they played CSU Vegas again, and Utah Valley again. Also, they played in the they will play Stanford. So the thing is, they didn't have a they played in the conference tournament, so they did um, won the championship. So they did win their championship against Grand Canyon. So Grand Canyon is in the WAC conference. So they're in the WAC conference. So they played them and won that championship. Okay, let's go ahead and look at their record to bear. Okay, let's look at it. Um, the, the, the thing that stands out on this record right here, their record wasn't good again on the road. So their record wasn't good on the road. They were 11 and 15. They kind of lost 15 games and won 11. Um, they were 6-1 in the neutral areas, neutral sites, 6-1. So they're very good on neutral sites. Um, Sacramento State. They played. Let's see. They had non-conference record, 21 and 14. RPI wise, they were 117. Non-conference, it was 162. Strength of schedule, they was 221, 221st. Also, in 199th in the so they did win. They did win their tournament because their RPI wasn't as good as the 1 through 25s or 26 through 50s. All right, let's go ahead and go over some more stuff. 1 through 25, they finished 1 and 2. So that's what I was saying. 1 through 2, and they didn't do too well there. They didn't do too well in the 26 through 50s, and also the 51 through 100. They kind of stunk in those against those teams. So in the 101 through 200, they finished 14 and 10. But when they take on the 201s, the 201 plus, that's the lower tier teams that goes maybe. That's the teams that have to win tournaments. They're not going to get into the top 16 to host or whatever. They have to win those tournaments because their RPI is not as good. They finished 23 and 7. 23 and 7. So I'm gonna say this. Look. Sacramento State, look, they're a little school that's in their WAC school out of the WAC. So we'll go ahead and look at the next one, which is Fresno State. We'll go ahead and do that. These are this is going to be a West Coast Stanford Regional. That's out in the West Coast. Let's go ahead and look at Fresno State. We'll go ahead and examine those guys as well. Okay, let's go back. I think it's the WAC conference again. So we'll go back there. That's another team out of the WAC. Let's go ahead and look at them. Okay, Fresno State is. I'm trying to see if I can grab it. Okay. Looking for the Fresno. Looking for Fresno State Cardinals. They're out the Mountain West. So let's go ahead and look at them. Mountain West. We'll go over to Fresno State's resume. We'll look at theirs as well. We'll examine their schedules and stuff like that. Fresno State, they won the championship a couple of years ago before, I think it was back in '08 when they won the um, College World Series. So I'm pretty sure if they um, win in the Stanford Regional, I'm pretty sure they most likely will be back in Omaha once again and try to contend for a championship. So that was back in that was 11 years ago. I think it was in '08. They won the regional. LSU won it in '09. So um, a year later. So let's go ahead and look at Fresno State. Fresno State finished 38-14-1, so they had a tie record. They had one right there that was tie, one tie. They also finished 28-1, so they had a good conference record as well in their conference. Okay, let's begin looking at their schedule. We'll go ahead and look at the RPIs later. We'll go ahead and examine them. Okay, they played Utah Valley State at the beginning of the season. They also played Utah. That was a Pac-12 school, but they couldn't get it in because of the rain up in San Diego. They also played Kansas State. That was a Big 12 school. They also played Fresno State, Cal State Fullerton. They played Cal State Fullerton, which is I think it's a Big West team out in the Big West. They also played Missouri State, which is a Ohio Valley school. They played Mountain West UNLV. They also played Tennessee. They played SEC Tennessee. They also played San Francisco. They did play San Francisco. A lot of teams on this schedule we looked at, San Francisco came up on these schedules. San Francisco Dimes came out on these schedules. They played Air Force. They couldn't play because of the snow, so they were snowed in, so they couldn't play that game. So they played Pacific, and they also played San Jose State, and they played CSU Bakersfield, and also they played San Diego State. That was one of their conference games. They also played Stanford, and they lost that game 2-0 to Stanford. So if they get in that championship final against Stanford, I'm pretty sure it might be a entirely different story with the Fresno State Bulldogs. They played Oregon as well. They got to make up that game with Air Force, so they got to do that. They won that game 3-0, but 3 games, and then they had a doubleheader and lost that game 3-1. So they played a 3-1 series right there, and no 4 games to 1, 1, 2. So that's 4 games right there, and they lost 1 game against. So they had to play that doubleheader because it was snow, and then the last game that was on April 14th. So they played so many games against Air Force. Also, they played CSU Bakersfield again. San Jose State again. Also New Mexico State. They played Cal Poly. They played Nevada. They played CSU Bakersfield, but it was postponed again. Also, they played San Diego State. That's Fresno State. They also played UNLV. Also in the Mountain West tournament, they went through their Mountain West tournament. They won Game 2, Game 4, and Game 6. That Game 6 was the championship. So they will play UC Santa Barbara. That is going to be on Friday, May 31st. So they will be in game number 2 of their regional of Stanford. Okay, let's begin looking at their record. Um, um, Fresno State finished 17-6 on the road, 15-8 at home. Also, they finished 6-0 in neutral sites. They finished 18-6 in non-conference play. Also, they finished 34th in their RPI. Also, in their non-conference RPI, they finished 44th. They also finished 138th in strength of schedule, and also non-conference strength of schedule, they finished 183rd. Um, okay, let's go ahead and look at versus the RPI teams. That's versus RPIs. Um, 1 through 25, Fresno State finished 1-3. 51 through 100, they finished 7-4. 101 through 200, they finished 26-6-1, 26-6-1, and they also finished 4-1 and 201 plus. 201 plus, they finished 4-1. But these records stand out right here. These right here, Fresno State's records against 51 through 100, 101 through 200, and also 201. So they're pretty good with those lower tier teams. The higher tier teams, I think won't win. So let's go ahead and look at UC Santa Barbara. That's UC Santa Barbara. So we are 1 hour and 27 minutes into this broadcast. So we'll go ahead and examine their records and stuff like that. Let's go begin with UC Santa Barbara. See where they're at, what conference they're in. UC Santa Barbara is in, I'm trying to see, Santa Clara. I kind of trying to see where they're at, conference they're in. UC Santa Barbara. Trying to scroll down, see where we're going. Let's go back. Big West Conference. Let's go to the Big West Conference. So that was the Big West Conference. So they was in the Big West Conference. They finished. Wow, that's impressive. 45-9. 45-9. They finished 19-5. So they had a 45 win season. So they put up pretty good numbers on that. 45 wins in the in their overall record, and also 19-5 in the Big West Conference. So we'll go ahead and examine their records. So we'll go ahead and start examining their records. Let's go ahead and begin looking at that. Okay, let's go ahead and they started with Loyola Marymount. They also started with UNLV. That was the second game of the season. Third game of the season, they played Harvard. They also played USC. They were out in California. They also played Pepperdine. They also played Tulane, UC Santa Barbara. Um, they did sweep the Green Wave 3-0, so that wasn't. So I followed. I broke that game down that night, so that wasn't. So they got swept. Tulane. Also, Nevada. They played Nevada. They played Cal Baptist. They played Missouri State. They also played Cal State Fullerton, and they played St. Mary's. They played Stephen F. Austin. They kind of single-handedly won that game. They played Pepperdine once again, and they won that game. Also, they played UC Irvine. UC Irvine, the Anteaters. They played UC Davis. So they played some of them as predominantly Cal. They also played Riverside, UC Riverside, um, in their game, and they kind of um, lost the series. Also, they played CSU Bakersfield once again. CS Cal State Northridge. That's Cal State Northridge. They also played um, St. Mary's. They also played Long Beach State, and also once again they also played Hawaii. They played Hawaii. They played Cal Poly, and they didn't have look like they didn't have a tournament. So Big West. So I think that's So let's go ahead and look at their record. They finished 27-3 at home, 18-6 on the road. So they are definitely a very good team on the road. 18-6 record. Also, they finished 26-4. That's a non-conference play for UC Davis. They finished 21st in their RPI, so they got in. They didn't win their conference championship because I don't think they have a conference championship, but they had a pretty good RPI showing. Also, they finished fifth in their non-conference RPI. Also, but their strength of schedule was just um, 181 and 117 strength of schedule in the non-conference. Let's go ahead and look at the versus RPI teams. 51 through 100, they finished 14-2. 101 through 200, 23-5. And the 201 plus, they finished 18-2. So the top two teams in the 1 through 25 and 26 through 50, they didn't play. So that's the resume on UC Santa Barbara. So that's that right there. This right here, this 45-9 right here. This is no joke right here. This is no fluke. This is no fluke at all. So we'll go ahead and get this out, and we'll. I think we covered the Starkville and also um, Stanford Regional. Now we'll begin with the last three. We'll begin with the last three. We'll go over the last couple of ones. We went over Chapel Hill. I think we did. No, we'll go over those. So we got a while. So okay, let's go over the Louisville Regional and the Greenville Regionals. So we'll go over both regionals teams and those paired up. Let's begin looking at the Louisville, Kentucky regional. We'll go over. First team we'll go over is Illinois, Chicago. That's um, U UIC. I think that's what their initials is, UIC. So they'll go over UIC, which is Illinois, Chicago, which is in the Verizon League. We'll look for it on my screen. So we'll go ahead and go over those conferences. I'm going over some stuff. Okay, the Horizon League. This is they're in the Horizon League. Illinois, Chicago. Let's go ahead and look at Illinois, Chicago. Illinois, Chicago finished 29 and 21. They finished 18 and 11 in the Horizon League play. Um, let's go ahead and go over their schedule. They played Georgia Tech um, in their first game, so they got an ACC school in their schedule. Also, they played Kennesaw State, and they also played Georgia State. They also played Texas A&M on their schedule as well. They played Roosevelt. Roosevelt, it was canceled due to weather. They played SIU Evansville. They played Northwestern. They had scheduled Northwestern, and they had impending weather. They played Chicago State, which is in their state, in the city of Chicago. So they played Chicago State. They played Iowa, and they couldn't get that in. So they had some teams from these predominantly good conferences to be on their schedule. But the truth of the matter is they couldn't get them in because of weather. They had to play Oakland. They had another issue with weather on that one, but they got to make it up on Saturday, March 16th through 17th. They also played Illinois State. They played Rice State. They played Northern Illinois. Excuse me. They also played Milwaukee. They got to play Northwestern again, and they got a victory off of them. They played Youngstown State. They played Northern Kentucky. They played Oakland. That's a Horizon League game. They played Northwestern. So they had Northwestern on their schedule multiple times for Illinois, Chicago. So Illinois, Chicago, they will schedule anybody at any time. Also, they played Notre Dame, so that was an ACC school. Wasn't they couldn't get it in. Also, they played Milwaukee. They played Chicago. That's Chicago. They played Youngstown State, Northern Kentucky again. So they had them on their schedule so many times. They played Wright State, Milwaukee in the Horizon League Championship. They did win that championship by beating them 6-5, but they will take on Louisville in Game 2. So that was one of the national seeds. Let's go ahead and look at Illinois Chicago's resume performance. They finished 18-6 at home. They also finished 7-15 on the road. They also finished 3-0. They also finished 11-10 in non-conference play. They also their non-conference strength of schedule wasn't that good. They was at 223rd. Also, their SOSs was in the 200s, in the high 200s. So So they had to win their championship because if you're in the high 200s, um, the truth of the matter is you have to win your champ and you lose. That's why RPIs are very important because you can, if you play those non-conference games in midweeks and stuff like that, whether it's 5 nights a week, 4 nights a week, or maybe 2 games out of those schedules. Look, you have to play them because that counts for your RPI. So let's go ahead and look at the versus 20 RPI teams 1 through 25. That was the ranked teams. They finished 1 and 3. 26 through 50. That's sub um, rankings teams. They finished 1 and 1. They also finished 2 and 5 in the 51 through 100 teams that they had to play on that schedule. Also, had a 10 in the 101 through 200 teams they had to play. They finished 7 and 3, and also the 201s, which is the high 200s. They finished 17 and 9, 17 and 9 for um, Illinois Chicago. So, sure, they won their championship. I think they did. Yeah, they did win their championship. But I'm gonna tell you, look, they're playing against a good Louisville team. I'm gonna tell you, they're not gonna. They're not gonna. It's not gonna be an easy game for Illinois Chicago to just go in there and beat them because they're playing them at their place, and they're the one of the top seeds that's hosting the regional in Louisville. Let's go ahead and go over Illinois State. We'll go over Indiana, and then we'll move along to the Greenville. We'll begin with Lubbock, and then we'll do Lubbock and Oklahoma City. We'll go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and pull this up, and we'll go to let's go to Illinois State. We'll start with Illinois State now. So Illinois State, and then we'll go with Indiana. So let's go with Illinois State, which is the I think is Ohio Valley. We'll go ahead and see that. No, I don't think it's the Ohio Valley. I think it's so I'm looking for it right now. I'm scrolling down looking for it. I'm trying to see if I can grab it off of here. Okay, that's not in. I think it's Ohio Valley. I'm trying to see. Um, say I think it's trying to see what conference that they're in. So we'll pull up the conference that I want to look for. That's why I'm looking for them on my screen. So if you don't mind me with this screening, we're just looking for the screen. Okay, Missouri Valley. So we'll go ahead and look at them. They're in the Missouri Valley Conference. We'll go ahead and look at their resume. Illinois State, we got them on the screen. Illinois State um, finished 24 and 4, 34 and 4. Excuse me. They finished 34 and 4, and 10 and 14 and 7 in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is the we'll look at the schedule. Let's begin. They played Belmont. They played Belmont on there. They also played Central Arkansas. They played Murray State. They also played Vanderbilt. So they had a date with Vanderbilt, and they did play Vanderbilt on there. They also played Southeast Missouri State. They played SIU Evansville. Also, they played Central Michigan. They played Illinois Chicago. They played Illinois. That's a Big Ten school. Also, they played Milwaukee. They played Creighton, but they didn't get to play that first game, but they had to make up for it um, on Saturday, March 30th through Sunday, March 31st. Shit, excuse me, I'm just sneezing. They also played Valparaiso, and also they played Iowa and Eastern Illinois. They played Missouri. They played Missouri Valley State, Missouri. They played Missouri State, and they played Illinois Chicago. They also played Sacramento State. They played Southern Illinois. They played Northern Illinois. They also played Dallas Baptist, which is also once again a very good team. They also get into conference regionals year after year after year. That's the thing about it, about those schools. Also, they played Indiana State. They played Northwestern. Northwestern is a um, Big East, Big Ten school. Big Ten school. Also, they played Evansville. They played um, Indiana State. They played Indiana State, and also they will take on Indiana. So they will have Indiana that will be in game one of the um, Louisville Regional. Let's go ahead and look at the by the numbers. Let's go ahead and do that. We go examine all the resumes of all these schools. So um, if you're on here, this is we're not doing the sports video recap tonight. We're doing regional breakdown tonight. We're going through all 64 teams in order. So that's what we're doing right now. If you're understand why I'm on here at almost 9 o'clock, and that's about 1 hour and 47 minutes. We're talking about the regionals, so I'm breaking them down. So let's go ahead and break down Illinois State. Let's begin. Looking at their record, they finished 13-5 in home games. They also finished 19-17 in road games. They also finished even 2-2 in neutral games. They also finished 20-17 in non-conference play. They also finished 26. So they had a pretty good RPI ranking at 26. So they would have not got him to the field of 16 to be a host. They would have never got him there. So, but they did get in the regional with their RPIs, and also their non-conference. They finished 22nd in their non-conference RPI. Also, they finished 19th in their strength of schedule, and also 4th. So they had maybe a very tough schedule for Illinois State because they're in the Missouri Valley Conference. So let's go ahead and look at the versus the RPI teams. With Illinois State, they finished 4-11. That's 1 through 25 teams right there. They also finished 26 and 1-3, and the 26 and 50 teams that they had to play on that schedule. Also, they finished 4-2, so they went pretty good on 51 through 100 teams they had to play. They beat those teams. They have a record of 4-2. Also, Illinois State in the 100 through 200 category teams that was on that schedule we showed you. They finished 17-7, and also they had an 8-1 record. So make no mistake about it. Sure, the first two records. The 4-11 and the 1-25 and the 1-3 doesn't mean a thing. Um, what matters is those last three, the 51 through 100, and also 101 through 200, and also the 201 plus. They finish with pretty good records. So whoever they get, I think they're going to um, turn some heads in that tournament. So that's Illinois. They will have Indiana. We'll go ahead and break down Indiana in just a second. That's so there. We're going to go with both teams. So let's do that. Okay. So let's go ahead and go over Indiana. Let's go ahead and break them down. They're in the Big Ten. We'll pull this up. Um, I mean, this is perfect research to so okay, Big Ten Conference. Let's go ahead and look at them. Let's go ahead and look at the Indiana Hoosiers. Let's go ahead and do that. The Indiana Hoosiers. Okay, Indiana Hoosiers finished 17-7 in the Big Ten Conference. That's a pretty good record right there. They won 17 games in that conference. Also, I don't want to have to repeat myself, so I'll just do it one more time. They finished 36-21, so they had a 36-win season for the Indiana Hoosiers. So their RPI was we'll go over that in just a few minutes. We want to go over the schedules. Okay, beginning with Memphis. They played Memphis. That was an American Conference team. They also played Tennessee. That's an SEC team. Also, they played another American Conference team in Cincinnati. They played Butler. That's I think that's Big East right there, Butler. Also, Big East and Butler. Also, they played Northeastern. That's another Northeastern team. Also played UConn. That's another American Conference team. So they played American Conference teams on this schedule for Indiana. Also, they played Indiana State, their rival. They couldn't get that game in, but we'll see if they got it in. They played Washington and Oregon State. They played Oregon State in the snow in the Seattle baseball showcase. That was in Seattle. That was in Seattle, Washington. They also played San Diego out of the I think it was the West Coast. I think it's the Big East, Big West, or whatever, whatever. Also, they played Cincinnati. They played Canisius. They played Canisius. Then they played Indiana. They got to play the Indiana that was on March 19th. Also, they started conference play with Iowa, and they played a MAC school that was sandwiched in between the Big Ten school conference schedule. They also played Maryland after that the week after that game against Kansas State, Kent State. I'm trying to get the words out. All right. They played Wright State. They played Penn State, so that was in conference play. Purdue. They played, I think there was one game against them. They played Evansville. They played Ball State. They played Michigan State. And they played Ball State again. That was in, let's see, back in April. So that was April, and then April 23rd, April 16th, and Tuesday, April 23rd. Also, they played Minnesota. Also, they played Illinois, and they played Kentucky. They played their They always play Michigan. That's one of their rivals in football right there every time. Um, Second to the Ohio State Michigan matchup. They played Indiana. Michigan played Indiana. Also, they played Louisville. They played Rutgers. They played in the Big Ten tournament that was in Omaha, Nebraska. They did lose two games, one to Iowa and one to Minnesota. So they will play Indiana State, Illinois State. Excuse me, I keep saying Indiana State, Illinois State. So let's go ahead and examine their by the numbers record. By the numbers. This is from D1 Baseball. This is a very legitimate site right here. Don't come on here and say this is all fake and all that. No, this is a very legitimate site. These writers, these people that goes to these games and stuff like that and write about these teams. So, okay, let's go ahead and give you the by the numbers. They finished 21-5 at home. Indiana also they finished 11-12 on the road. They finished 4-4 in neutral sites. They also finished 19-14 in non-conference play, and 36 they got in. They did get in with that 36 RPI, so they was in that range where they can get into the tournament. Um, I think there was at large. I'm pretty sure there was an at large. Also, they finished 47. Also, they finished 56 in strength for schedule and 27 in non-conference strength for schedule. So, all right. Versus RPI teams 1 through 25, they finished 1-5. 26 through 50, they finished 4-3. 51 through 100, they finished 10-8. For Indiana, 101 through 200, they finished 19-5. They also finished 2-0 against the 201s, so they had a 2-0 record. They played the 201 teams. That's 201 plus, and they kind of won those games. So that's the story on Indiana. We also went over the. Let's go ahead and go over the Greenville, North Carolina one. I think we'll go over that, and then we'll go over Lubbock. So we'll go over that. Let's go over. Let's switch out. We'll go over the other teams in the Greenville, North Carolina regional. That's East Carolina's regional. We'll go over that regional. The teams in that regional. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's start off with Quinnipiac. We'll start with Quinnipiac, and then we'll have Campbell, and then we'll have North Carolina State. Let's start with Quinnipiac. Let's go see where Quinnipiac is. Quinnipiac, I think it's in Buffalo. That's what Fox 87 told me. And also Siena, I think it is. Canisius or something. Well, also Canisius. Let's go ahead and see where they're at. Let's go ahead and look at that. I think it's north. Trying to see where it's at. So Quinnipiac is in, I think, northeast. Okay, Quinnipiac is in. They're not in the Northeast Conference. Okay, Quinnipiac is in the Metro Atlantic Conference. Tulane was in the Metro Conference a couple of years ago before they went to the Conference USA and also the American Conference. So this is Quinnipieg's record. We'll go ahead and go over their record. They finished 29 and 27 on the season, 17 and 7 in the Metro Atlantic. So I think Tulane is very familiar with this team because they played them a couple of years ago. I think that was way before the Conference USA and American Conference days. Okay, let's begin. Examining their schedule. They played UMC Greensboro. That's one of those, I think, SOCOM. They played Wake Forest. They also played Elon. That was in, that would have been in Winston-Salem. They played Elon again. That was a makeup game. They also played Norfolk State. That's the, I think that's the MEAC school. They played a MEAC school in Norfolk State. They also played Florida Gulf Coast. They played Florida Atlantic. They played Bryan. They played Richmond. They also played Yale. That's an Ivy League school. They played St. Pete's. They played Rhode Island. They also played Dartmouth. That's a Ivy League school, Dartmouth. They played Niagara. They also played Central Connecticut. And they played Canisius. They did play Canisius. Quinnipieg. Also, they played Hartford, Boston College, LaSalle, Yale again. They played Siena. They played UMass. They played Rider. They also played Central Connecticut once again, and then they played Iona. Let's see. They played them 1, 2, 3. They didn't play the third game. They had to play 3 times, so they played them 3 times in a series. They couldn't get this game in because of the weather. That's all. Also, they had to play Fairfield. They played Manhattan. That's a Metro Atlantic team. Also, they played Fairfield again. That was in the MEAC tournament, and they did win their championship, so they got in. Sure, their RPI was not as good to get into the 16 region, the 16 team slot that hosts regionals. They couldn't get it. So they had to win their tournament. They had to win the tournament to get into the regional. That's the thing about it. When you had these teams that's lower tier teams, they have to win their tournaments. You'll win your regular season championship. You'll get in with your regular season championship, but if you don't win your regular season, you have to win your tournaments. That's plain and simple. That was in Staten Island, New York. That's a north. I think that's a northeast team. I think that's what it is. Quinnipieg. They had a 12-5 record. Also, their road record is not as good, not as impressive. They finished 14-19. Also, they finished 3-3. They finished 12-20. So their non-conference record stunk. They did absolutely stunk in their non-conference record. So that's not a good record right there, non-conference wise. So, okay, we showed you their RPI. We talked about their RPI. Let's talk about their performance. Okay, their only performance I'm going to show you right here was the I'm gonna highlight it was the in the 201 plus. They finished 20-7 against the 201 plus. That's Quinnipieg. So the other records they stunk on those other records versus RPI teams. So I don't know if they're probably gonna be a one and done team going into these regionals because they're playing against a good East Carolina team, and I'm gonna tell you, East Carolina, they might just knock them, put them in the losers bracket. So So that's my take on that one. We'll go over Campbell, and we'll also go over North Carolina State. I know this is 2 hours. We're going at it 2 hours, but I want to get this done tonight, so I don't have to be behind. So just please bear with me. I know people don't want to hear me talking for the last 2 hours, but we have to break these down, so we have to do this. All right, let's start with Campbell. Let's go ahead and look at Campbell. Campbell is in the Big South Conference. We'll go ahead and look at those guys. Campbell finished 35 and 19. They finished 19 and 7 in the Big South Conference. So let's go ahead and look at their schedule. They played in the first game against Maryland. They had VCU on their schedule. They also had Big East team in Georgetown. They also had ACC opponents in North Carolina State. They had Fairfield, Old Dominion, William and Mary, North Carolina Central, High Point. So they had High Point. They also had Duke. They also had North Carolina on their schedule. So they had a very rough and brutal schedule. So they're going to put these brutal schedules together because they want to get these RPIs improved. So in the Big South tournament, we'll go ahead and look at the Big South tournament. They did win the Big South tournament championship. So that was in game 14. That was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Okay, let's begin looking at the numbers. Numbers wise, Campbell finished 12 and 12 on the road, 19 and 6 at home. They also finished 16 and 12 in non-conference play. They also finished 56 in their RPI even 56. They also finished 13th in their non-conference strength of schedule. Non-conference strength of schedule. Their let's see. Their only performance was against good performance was the 26 through 50, the 101 through 200. They finished 16 and 6, and also the 201. They finished 13 and 4. So the 201 plus RPI teams, they finished 13 and 4 on the season. But here's the thing: they finished 3 and 6 versus the 51 through 100 teams. 3 and 6, and also 2 and 3 in the 1 and 25s. That was the higher teams. That's the team that's ranking the top 25 and stuff like that for the polls. The teams that's in the Power 5 and stuff like that, or whatever. So that's the Campbell resume. We'll go ahead and look at the next resume, which is North Carolina State. We'll go ahead and into North Carolina State. I'll pull it back up, so we have to have the screen in there so I can look up these teams and show you their records and stuff like that. Okay, North Carolina State. We'll go over the last one in that regional, and we'll move along. So we're going to go over the Lubbock regional. We'll probably close out, and we'll go over those tomorrow. So I've been at it 2 hours, so I want to kind of take a break from this from these regionals. So we'll probably get it done again tomorrow. So we'll do it. We'll do it, and then we'll also go over Los Angeles, Corvallis, Morgantown. So we already went over Atlanta and Chapel Hill. So we'll have. I think we went over Morgantown. So we'll go over and we'll also go over Corvallis and Los Angeles and Morgantown and um, Nashville regional, and then we'll call it um, a day. So let's go ahead and finish up for the night. So we've been at this 2 hours, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish up. I want to get this done. So let's go over North Carolina State. North Carolina State finished 42 and 17, 18 and 12 in um, ACC play. They finished 18th in their RPI, 46 in their strength of schedule. They also finished um, 15th in their top 25 polls. Let's go ahead and look at them. Um, Bucknell, they played Bucknell. They also played. So this was a pretty good schedule for these guys too. They also played Big Ten Minnesota. They played Pittsburgh on that schedule. They also played Florida State. That was their conference schedule. So that was their conference schedules. But the main schools they was playing, let's go ahead and scroll down and we'll see. Um, so they did get eliminated in against Georgia Tech. So that is the schedule. So that their big schedule. They didn't have their schedule like that. They're 46 in the strength for schedule. That's one thing about it. So that's just water under the bridge. So let's go ahead and look at the by the numbers. Okay, by the numbers, let's go ahead and look at that. They finished 23 and 8 at home, 15 and 6 on the road, 4 and 3 in neutral sites. They also finished 24 and 5 in non-conference play. They finished 18th in their RPI. They finished 15th in the non-conference. They also finished 46 in their strength of schedule and 168 in their non-conference strength of schedule. They also finished 5 and 5 versus RPI teams 1 through 25, 26 through 50. They finished 6 and 4, 51 through 100. They finished 11 and 6. Also, they finished 12 and 2, and the last one they finished 8 and 0. So that was what they finished. So that's going to be in the Greenville, North Carolina regional. So that's it. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm getting a little tired. So okay, this concludes the NCAA bracket breakdown part 2. We will have part 3 tomorrow. We'll have the Lubbock regional. We'll have to go over. We'll have the Oklahoma City regional. We'll also go over the Los Angeles and Corvallis regional, and we'll also go over the Morgantown and Nashville regional, and I think that will be it for the regional. So thanks for everybody watching this program. I appreciate it. So I know it was over 2 hours. We was doing this, but we had to get it done. We had to get this finished so we can focus on these games on Friday. So we will not have. We probably might not have another news headlines no more tomorrow because we have to do our regional breakdown again. So we'll do it again, part 3. So that will be tomorrow. As always, like, share, and subscribe. Carry My Sports and the NO Sports blog on Facebook. You also follow me on WordPress, Redding, Tumblr, Instagram, and also Daily Motion. So that's where you can find me. We do these multi-stream 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So everybody, once again, have a happy Memorial Day. Once again, please remember those who fought and died for the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So without that, look, we would not be free. We wouldn't be able to do these shows and stuff like this, and we wouldn't be able to have the freedoms that we have today. So please keep those men and women that died in the in the recent wars in your thoughts and prayers when you go to when you do your little barbecues and stuff. I know a lot of people thinks that Memorial Day is just the start of summer and all that. That's not the case. I mean, look, people's got to be re-educated on that. So please keep those guys in your thoughts and prayers, and also the men and women that's currently fighting for our freedoms across the world. So everybody, have a good happy Memorial Day.